I do want to thank you all for coming today. And this is the second program that we've had here at the firm on AI. The first program I attended was very technical, and I thought that AI was a steak sauce you got at the Hilltop restaurant. And we have our second program today. Next to me is a partner here at the firm, Portia Keaty, and Portia is hosting a program the 22nd. You may get an invitation to it next week, and I'm just going to ask her to talk about the program for a minute. And she's arranged the program with the relationship she has with the speakers. So I just want to welcome Portia and let her say what the program is next, the 22nd at 9 o'clock. And of course, you're all you're all welcome. This topic is just exploding, and we thought we'd have a series and keep it going as long as there's interest in it. And Portia's looking at it with a different lens. So, Portia.
Thank you, Bill. So next week we have Charlie Hernandez coming, and he is the founder of My Pocket Lawyer. He's also an HLS, Harvard Law School, Harvard Business School graduate. He has founded a company that uses AI to provide consumer-facing advice. It's not legal advice to folks who don't have access to lawyers. So it's an access to justice issue. There's a lot of litigation going on right now to see if that's actually legal. He's faced a lot of pushback from the legal industry in terms of whether or not there's issues of practice of law by an AI program. So it's certainly an evolving case study on whether or not this kind of tech will be part of the practice of law for the future. So he's going to be doing a demo on the product. It's very fascinating. It's a little scary. He's going to explain sort of the gap in the industry as to why there's ripe opportunity for investment and sort of consumer faced use of AI. So I encourage everybody to come. I know it's school vacation week, but if you can get out of the house for an hour or two with your kids, would encourage you guys to all come. So thanks. Yep. Yep. Case law.
A memo or
Yeah.
bogus case, I think.
Yeah, he's going to be talking about the various litigations that are ongoing. One is obviously that, which is AI is a new product, and so apparently a lawyer used, I think it was Chat GPT, and it spit out a fake case, and he cited it in a document submitted to the court. Another thing that's ongoing is there's actually litigation of paralegals who have brought a lawsuit who want to be able to provide legal services. They were shut down because it's a technical violation of the practice of law because they're not barred. But they won their case. So Charlie and the AI community are using that as precedent to basically say that people shouldn't be barred from accessing legal information due to the practice of law statutes in various jurisdictions. Um, the other interesting wrinkle is how do law firms adapt to AI? So there are a lot of products like Relativity that we use using AI, but one of the functions of My Pocket Lawyer is to access smaller law firms. So the business case study is if AI can sort of do client intake, the AI will then partner with smaller law firms who have, smaller budgets for marketing, etc. Um, and so the platform would package up a client intake form with sort of the background on the case and then submit that to law firms in the partnership. I also know that My Pocket Lawyer is developing programs for PE, corporate and investment banking platforms, with the specific focus on assisting in contract review and diligence. So there's a lot going on. Very interesting. And apparently Legal Tech Week, which was 2 weeks ago now, AI was sort of the majority of the presentations given. So
Age. Changing.
yeah. Yeah, well, Suffolk Law School actually has a class on lawyering in the 21st century, and they've had, I think, 3 to 4 presenters come. Two of the programs are also AI legal platforms to generate, it's a lot of focus on family law. So one woman who's a Suffolk Law graduate has developed a program that's taking off for prenups. And then there's another one in the works for guardianship appointment. So I think the point is that it's happening, whether the legal industry likes it or not. It's just a question of pace and, what are the barriers to entry.
What's vision is?
Thank you. Marians, about 4,000 years ago, using local technology, changed the world, changed the human brain. They invented writing. Writing and reading are epigenetic. Products of the human. Changed everything. AI's impact, similar. Our under vision and generosity, all our endeavors are to focus sharply, fundamentally into look at the last 10,000 years of history. At every turn, technological innovation have created progress, have created winners, losers. At every turn. The question now becomes, how do we imagine and how do we engineer frameworks to bring equity and to bring architecture, ethical concerns that will flow from this fundamentally transformation technology. For a long time, we imagined that human language was unique, fundamentally irreplaceable. We are entering an entirely new theology, theological economy, society, or how we work, how we manage the sociability of the so this is creating fundamental. We are a campus that serves the most diverse campus in New England. Our students are immigrant origin. Our students are first generation college. Through Paul's vision, we want to make sure that our students have all the tools they're deploying artificial intelligence to enhance their flourishing in specific domains of AI for nursing and health sciences, AI for engineering, AI for computer science, AI for education. So the first endeavor is how do we make sure that every student that leaves the campus tools they're going to engage this world. Second piece is the ethics. This is an area of immense concern. I'm working with Attorney General Andrew Campbell on the matter of AI. Very, very. Bill, as you know, I also serve the Holy Father as his science advisor. The Holy Father has asked us to develop an initiative to examine ethical aspects of AI for the world's underserved population. That's we're doing significant work. Ethics.
Shannon, Steve, want to come forward? We'll start. This month, Trustee Magazine talks about the University. The day, August 21, started their AI program. It was a new suite of generative artificial intelligence, community of more than 100,000 people launched by the University of Michigan campus. Went to ensure equitable access to generative AI tools on campus by making it free for all students, faculty, and staff. And that's Michigan and other are doing the same thing. Yesterday, Governor Healy launched an AI task force. On Wednesday, she announced the formation of an artificial intelligence task force and a proposed $100 million research and innovation hub to give local businesses competitive edge in AI development and deployment. We'll issue a report that will study the impact of AI technology on state government, universities, and the private sector. Governor and Secretary Howe sees AI now as the next area where the Commonwealth be heavily engaged. So that's today's. It's going to be an applied A1 hub. That this money is going to be in the economic development bill the governor's going to file soon. It will conduct research and development of AI technology by grants to local startups companies in the AI sector. I've asked partners Shannon Zolo, closest to me, and Steve Saunders to participate in this panel today. And so I'd like to take a few minutes and have Steve and Zolo just talk a little bit about their practices. And then I have some direct questions more on the law that I'd like to, on the law practice. Shannon, would you just talk briefly about your practice here at Nutter and how AI might come into it?
Is this Plan B?
This is Plan A.
Plan A, okay. Okay. My name's Shannon Zolo. I lead the M&A and private equity practice at Nutter. We're deal-focused, investments, buying and selling of companies, things of that nature. AI has absolutely begun, and I use that word strategically, begun to have an impact in the deal world, but it's not there yet. And our firm, together with our competitors, are exploring the optionality around AI and the impact that it can have in the deal world and in the legal practice generally. I don't know, in terms of the membership of the audience, I don't know the level of understanding of AI, whether it's extensive and detailed, or this is the first time you're attending something of this nature, something in between.
In between.
But what's clear, at least as relates to legal, and I'll give you a specific example, is that there are multiple iterations forthcoming as it relates to AI. So by way of example, we had a client come in last summer, last July, and that client has an extensive amount of technical expertise in AI and was involved in AI before it was coined a phrase within the industry. So 20+ years of effectively focused on quantum computing, smart computing, interactive computing. And he gave our partnership a presentation. There probably were 150 people or so in the room at the time, mostly lawyers. And if you were paying attention to what he said and the examples that he gave, it became clear to me pretty quickly, disruptive. And I asked a question of him, and I said, so Anand, you're telling me that if you have a database of deal docs and you enter parameters for a purchase agreement based on the type of deal that you want to have occur, the initial draft of that purchase agreement can be produced in 30 seconds? To which he responded, no, 10 seconds. And instantaneously, I thought to myself, I'm a junior associate. If I'm a mid-level associate, that should be a concerning evolution in the legal practice. Because 20+ years ago, when we started, we cut our teeth on these types of documents as juniors, and you drafted it and spent hours on it. And then with a senior attorney, you refined it. So that's one example of where I think this will become a disruptive technology as it relates to legal. There are lots of other thoughts, but I just wanted to give you that context, at least as it relates to me and to the deal teams that I manage.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Steve Saunders. I'm an engineer who, as a 21-year-old, thought, hey, why don't I check out law school, see what it's all about? And here I am. I was in 1989, 88, so it's a long time later. And somehow I became a lawyer and seemed to work out okay. I am also a proud / embarrassed person who pays $20 a month for ChatGPT 4.0. And I found it to have varying help, being very, good and bad, real interesting. Quick anecdote, I've gotten involved a lot in the angel investment world. We meet right here, for example, one of our groups, Launchpad Ventures, I'm involved with, and also Hub Angels and various groups have been in that world for about 20 years. I've seen this interesting evolution of how technology has been presented to us over time. And there's a similar approach as an intellectual property lawyer. People are talking about their technologies also and how they're kind of cool and how they're going to make money. And because it's all about, people don't come to me and say, hey, I want to get a patent to hang it on the wall. They want to get a patent to build a company and develop value. And so I've noticed this evolution where back in the turn of the century, I like to say that, I feel like my grandmother, in the turn of the century, we had everybody saying, oh, this is web-based, and then it became SaaS. And then everything evolved to all the companies coming in and said, hey, this is a real networking effect. Remember all the companies changed their name in 2000 to be .com, and then they got rid of that shortly thereafter. Then it sort of evolved, I saw, into big data and everything being big data. And then it's continued to evolve to blockchain. But then this AI thing's coming along. And I think this blows away all of those, even the internet. I mean, this is just, I think, going to be an enormous change, which is why we're all here. And so watching that evolution, though, I'm really excited to hear what Paul has to say, because he's great insight. So I'm going to be as much of an observer as you.
Thank
So,
you, Steve.
yeah.
Well, welcome. I want to welcome Paul Inglis to our panel with Shannon and Steve. Thank you for coming today.
Likewise, it's good to be here.
We had Shannon and Steve talk about the practices here, facing AI practices. In terms of what I was going to do just for a few minutes before we get into a discussion between the three is just talking a few things Paul particularly that he's engaged in. Paul grew up in West Roxbury, went to Boston Latin School, and then went to the University of and after graduating, Paul Can you tell us your career in terms of how you, why, how, you're interested in computer science, and where that took you after you
Yeah,
that led to you becoming an entrepreneur of your own?
it was almost an accident that I went to UMass. I was number 6 or 7 in my family. I think it was a 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom and 9 people. And we didn't have a lot of money for college. So I wasn't assuming I was going to go to college. I only applied to one school, which is BC, and they rejected me. So then I found out that little UMass might consider taking me in because I had aced my SATs. So I got a free ride at UMass, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It opened my eyes to diversity of all types, of all languages and nationalities and race. And I made a lot of good life-term friends there. I worked full-time when I went to school at UMass. I went to UMass at night, and I worked full-time as a programmer. And every year I would switch industries. So one year I worked for the Air Force, putting equipment on spy planes. Next year, I worked for a biotech company, rebuilding all of their IT backend systems. Next year, I'd work for a medical device company on a blood centrifuge machine. So really, I tried to do as broad an entry as I could to software engineering. After I graduated, I went to one company for 6 years called Interleaf. And then since then, I left them in 95. I've just been doing my own startups. I've done 6 startups now. So Kayak was my 3rd startup. And I was an EIR at Greylock for Bill Kaiser. And it's a little bit longer story. My mom had passed away and left me in charge of my dad. My dad had Alzheimer's. So I quit my old job and got a job as an EIR so I could have flexible hours to take care of my dad. But my dad ended up passing away. And then by chance, I was at General Catalyst in Harvard Square looking at a company for them. And Larry Bond had seen me over there. He was my old boss and introduced me to a young guy named Steve Hafner, who was one of the founders of Orbis. And Steve had an idea for a travel company, but needed a CTO. And we went down to Legal Seafoods. We had a few drinks. I think it was a liquid lunch. And he gave me the pitch. I told him I would find him a CEO. He said, well, I wouldn't be you. I said, I got to do my own again. He said, what would it take? After he just offered me 4%. And I said, 50% minimum. And he said, in. So it just was illustrative that he and I had very dynamic negotiation tactics.
Must have been that liquid lunch.
Yeah, maybe.
And when you think of the other startups. Oh, sure. Sure. In terms of how you look at the other startups that you've created, what is it about? What are you looking for? How do you determine, is there a trend? Is there a need? Is there a void you're trying to fill when you think about that next, what's on the horizon?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I do when I train people in entrepreneurship, and I've taught at all the usual places, MIT, Stanford, Harvard, but I've also taught at things like Dartmouth Film School, Rhode Island School of Design, Berkeley School of Music. So I lecture on creativity and where creativity comes from. The most important thing, whether you're a jazz musician who wants to improvise, or you're a software developer and you want to build the next great Bitcoin system, is you learn from what came before you, and you study the market before you exist, and you try to see what problems exist in the market. It's way more important that an engineer attaches him or herself to a problem than it is what they're working on. Most tech companies fail for 2 reasons. Either there's a founder implosion, toxic culture, which happens all too often, sadly, and we need to do things to make sure that happens less often. Or the team builds really good technology, but it's a problem no one cares about. And so the first thing that I do when I work with entrepreneurial teams to say, are we sure this is such a big problem? Like, who's solving it today? How are they solving it? How much are they charging for it? Do we really think we can do something that's 10x better that people would pay for? So really validate the problem and spend the first year talking about the problem more than you talk about the solution.
When you thought of Lola, what were you getting at when you founded that?
So Lola, there's 2 Lolas in my past. There's a business travel company I created that we ended up selling to Capital One. And when I sold it, I kept the name. And now my girlfriend and I are creating a dating app called Lola.
First,
For the first one. Okay, so for the first one, when people do business travel, if you use business travel software like Concur, it limits what you can book. And people get very angry and they say, I know there's a flight that can get me home in time for my kid's soccer game. Why isn't Concur showing me that flight? And so what people end up doing is they cheat and they go outside the system. So our first observation was, we will show every flight available, whether it's in policy to out of policy. We'll still let you book one out of policy, but if you book it, just make a note as to why you're booking it. That's the first revelation, is put the entire universe of travel into one interface.
You eventually sold that?
Yeah, 2019 was an amazing year for us. 2020, our revenue went to zero with the pandemic because no one traveled. We did a hard pivot from travel management to business management and finance management. And we sold the company to Capital One.
In the new program, the new Lola is a dating app. Would you describe that?
It's a dating app, yeah, and it's a very fun space to work in. My girlfriend Rachel and I met on a dating app, and all people who are single like talking about their dating apps. I had lunch with the guy yesterday. He was an influencer with 1 million followers. Going to do some work with us on one of our projects. He told me he sits around the TV at night with his friends, and he'll connect his iPhone to his Apple TV and go through his Tinder profile, swiping and chatting, flirting with girls. Then he'll hand his phone to the next person, and they will flirt as him to different girls and say all crazy stuff. And it's become entertainment. However, it's also stressful because you have to swipe at something like hundreds of people before you match someone to go on a date. So Lola circuits all that. When you first run Lola, we say, where for people who want to go out on dates this week? What night do you want to go out? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You pick the next 4 nights. If you're not ready, you click, I'm not ready to go out this week. We say, Lola's people want to go out this week. If you just want to chat, we highly recommend Tinder or Bumble. Those are great apps for chatting, as a little bit of an FU to them. So we just try to get people on dates really quick. And then the second thing we do, if you're interested, there might be some legal issues here. Maybe I can get some advice in the room. Is at the end of the date, let's say you meet with someone named Rachel for Monday night. On Tuesday morning, we message both of you and we say, did you meet her last night? Yes or no? How'd you rate the experience 1 to 5? And which of these positive and negative attributes do you associate with the date? We feed all that into the machine learning system to get you better and better dates. And things that annoy you about people, we're not going to give you any other people who exhibit those behaviors. At the end of 5 dates, we do something radical. And we say, do you want to see what your dating scorecard, what the last 5 women said about you? And the reason we do this is you want to train people how to be better daters. A lot of people get a lot of first dates, but not second dates. We're going to show you why you don't get second dates. And all the things we come up with are correctable.
And what's the reaction to this Lola been so far?
It's a lot of excitement. We have just about 3,000 accounts right now. We're trying to get some more accounts before we open up the matching.
Interesting. We didn't have that 40 years ago when I was, I wouldn't like those comments though. We did talk a little bit about, with the Chancellor, about the Institute at UMass. And you talked a little bit just now about why UMass was a good experience for you. 2 questions about UMass in terms of the Institute. Why? What is your vision for that institute at university? And why did you feel that merited, contribution was $5 million. Why that merited that kind of contribution to the university?
The reason why UMass is, I've started 4 nonprofits. One of my nonprofits is called Embrace Boston. We built the Embrace Memorial on the Boston Common, and we raised $35 million for racial justice. So I spend a lot of my time in churches in Dorchester and Roxbury, trying to get to know the community and see what they need and look at what they're doing for job training and finding jobs. And it's in my observance that there are incredibly talented people in every neighborhood in the city. Some just for whatever reason aren't connected to the higher paying jobs. So I'm trying to do that. I think the next thing that I could do personally, particularly for Dorchester and Roxbury, really for all over the city, is teach people how to use AI to get a leg up at your job. And it doesn't matter what your job is. You could be a roofer. We'll teach you how to use AI to write better marketing campaign, to get more people to learn about your roofing company. We'll teach you how to use AI to write job bids and proposals and how to come up with estimates. Really, any job you have, we will teach AI to make you better at that job. The reason UMass is the third most integrated, third most diverse university in the United States. It's number one in New England. I think when they gave me an honorary doctorate a few years ago, the graduating class primary language represented 60 different languages. So it's incredibly diverse. And I think immigration, we talk a lot about undocumented immigration, but what we don't talk enough about is strategic immigration. And I think we need to do a lot more strategically to get people to come to the country, the right people who have clean records, whether we're entrepreneurs or risk takers want to set some stuff. And UMass is a great place for those immigrants to come to, and they work together and they start companies. And I want to get more companies started out of UMass Boston. I want every student to be a better student using AI, and I want every student to be better at their career using AI. In the nursing schools, we have 6 schools. We're teaching AI of how to be a better student, how to catch up when you fall behind, how to get specialized learning. But we're also teaching how to use AI when you become a nurse. And that's very scary. Like, what will the senior doctors think when the physician assistant and nurses and nurse practitioners all have diagnostic skills which rival the doctor, even if the doctor has 10 or 15 years more experience? What's that going to look like? That's coming, and we got to figure that out.
We had, before you came, we had a partner of ours, Portia Keaty, who's going to do a program next week. And she talked about, paralegals, when they're using AI, when does that become the practice of law? So the same thing here. When does that nurse practitioner go at the top of her license? When does she exceed that?
Yeah,
And that could be a problem, couldn't it?
yeah. We need new titles. We need new language. Every time there's a technology shift, becomes a need for a language to evolve.
The legislature has increased the scope of what nurse practitioners and those folks can do
Yeah.
in terms of that. Are you going to have a role, an active role in the Institute?
I'm coaching, so Marcelo and I become good friends, and I bug him every now and then. I go over to his office and we look at the different schools, the programs, and see what people are teaching, try to figure out how to get the students more engaged. In many cases, when there's a tech shift, the 19-year-old students will know more than the average professor. And I think that's true with AI. These kids are using these tools already. But how can we get the teachers and the kids together to say, what's the best way we should use this in biology so that to make you a better biology student?
You mentioned the Embrace. Let's talk about your charities. I do want to recognize Reverend Brown is here, Reverend. And Reverend Brown was with Paul, and third person was
Liz Walker.
Liz Walker. So they came together to do to raise funds, and the Embrace statue now is a reality. Again, why? You grew up at a time in the city where things were, I think, different, maybe today, in terms of the city. What was it about Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, in this memorial that you interested, one, to put time, energy, and money into it, and with Reverend Brown and Liz Walker?
So I grew up in the 70s and I got bused all over the city. I think by the time I went to Boston Latin High School in 7th grade, I'd been to 7 schools. For me, I was very, today they would say ADHD, and the thought of trapping me in front of a desk for 8 hours a day, it just doesn't work for me. I literally need to take medication to sit down somewhere for 3 hours. I'm so hyperactive. So school was very difficult for me, so I bounced around. And one of the things in bouncing around is I discovered kids from other countries, and African-American kids, immigrant kids, Caribbean kids, Eastern European kids. And that was very, very eye-opening to me, because where I grew up in West Roxbury, it was all mostly Catholic, white Catholic, or sometimes Christian Greek, or Irish or Italian, but it's a very white neighborhood. And so the more exposed I got to other kids, the more I started reading about other backgrounds and talking to these kids, talking to one girl who was in Bible school in Dorchester, and I didn't really read the Bible growing up, but I read the Bible, just had something to talk with her about. And
That part of the dating app.
that's very funny. I watched a TV show called Young Sheldon, and in there's a character, Georgie, who joins Bible group to go after an attractive girl. Maybe that I was channeling that. But
What
I
has
read a
the
lot.
impact been in your mind? What is the impact of the Embrace? Well, has it had one? And what do you think it has been? There's also been some negative to it as well, but I mentioned that to you one day, and you said public arts should evoke.
There's never been good public art without vicious critics. People in France thought the Eiffel Tower was horrendous, a travesty. It was going to ruin Paris. When the French sent the Statue of Liberty over, it was supposed to go in DC, but it's deemed too ugly to put up in DC near the White House or the State House. So they sent it to New York, and it sat in storage in New York for a while. They thought it was too ugly to put on the mainland of Manhattan. So they put it off to an island. Now it's a symbol of America. You look at Mei Lin's wall, the Vietnam Wall in Washington, D.C., that was seen as a travesty, and there was huge protesting back at the time to try to get the president to cancel the project. And now it's one of the most beloved memorials at Washington, D.C. I don't know enough about public art myself. We did have a pretty great committee that we put together that I can say for certainty this is what the reputation will be in 100 or 200 years. But I will say the criticism has all but diminished. And what the positive news we get right now are when people are on the Boston Common, they walk by it and they see it, and it starts conversations. And a lot of people hug themselves, and they hug friends and strangers in front of the Embrace. So it's about love, it's about embrace.
How do you feel when you hear those stories that you see that occurring?
And the best one was I was at a bar in Boston, and I had an Embrace pin on my jacket. I'd just come from an event. And the bartender, to my surprise, recognized this pin. He knew what it was. And he told me that his mother had met Dr. King and how important it was that in his city that we would do something of this scale to memorialize a person that important, and particularly that important for people of color. And he started crying. And I said, I'm actually the founder of the Embrace. You can have my pen. So I just gave him my pen. And that's when he started crying. No one ever cried when I told him I invented kayak. Maybe like you screwed up my honeymoon, but when I think about how people respond to different projects I work on, I feel pretty good about Embrace.
Wait till you get the responses from that dating app.
Yeah.
Could be a little different.
Yeah.
Reverend Brown, reaction to Embrace from your point of view with Paul.
On, on Sunday, I run an annual event called the Winter Walk for Homelessness. So we had 4,000 walkers this Sunday. And it's very cool that in walking around the Boston Common, you walk by the King Memorial. So that was two worlds of mine coming together one morning last weekend, which is very nice.
Paul mentions on Sunday, the Winter Walk. I know folks from Pine Street are here. Dr. Jim O'Connell from the Boston Healthcare for the Homeless program walked as well. And that's one of there's several charities that Paul is now involved in, the Embrace, the Winter Walk. There's one that's very close to you, is the Bipolar Society. Can we just talk about that for a sec before we get into?
Yeah, so because I struggled a lot with bipolar illness in my 20s and 30s. I had a lot of violence in my teen years and my 20s and got in a lot of trouble. It wasn't until I was around 40 that I started figuring out what works for me. In my case, it was Buddhism study. I study on Thursday nights at Cambridge Center Meditation Center, and a combination of medications and therapists. But I finally figured it out, and I think I'm in pretty good shape the past 10 years. But because I've been open about this, families reach out to me and they say, our son is 22 and just withdrew from college because he's so severely bipolar and he can't get a job. And so I mentor, I'd say 6 of these young men. They're all men, not women. And they're around the world. And it's become really meaningful for me to give back, to think about when I was 26, so I can help these men. And one of them moved to Kenya 2 years ago, and I was going to help him start a company there, but he ended up killing himself in Kenya. This was very devastating for me because I was mentoring him for about a year. And he always told me how much he looked up to me. And in memory of Jake's death, I created the Bipolar Social Club. It's bipolarsocialclub.org. There's video stories of well-known people who have bipolar that we put together the series. And there's an email list, a Discord server, a Slack server, Zoom meetings, and in-person meetings. There's only 110 people. It's around the world. But I've had people tell me regularly that this forum has saved their lives. And one of the young men that I'm mentoring lives in Los Angeles. He told me that he loves his therapist, but his therapist is not bipolar. But he trusts these 110 people as his brothers and sisters, and that you can say anything. Sometimes when you're dealing with a mental health issue, your mind is so wild that you don't want to say out loud what your mind is thinking. But if you have a community of people that are the exact same as you can say that stuff and be accepted completely, like filled with unconditional love. So it's been really one of the most meaningful things I've ever done.
Is it, I use the word model, but don't be, is it modeled somewhat after Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yes,
It is.
yeah.
And how, any particular things you adopted, you have adopted from the AA that you have included in your society?
Yeah, I think a couple things. You want the raw honesty that exists in AA. So my name is Paul, I'm an alcoholic. You want people to have accountability to the peers. Yeah, we have peer group leaders, just like you do in AA, who watch out for people. And when people are going through a bad time, we know we sort of lean in and help them. But there's a number of things we're doing relating to keeping this community vibrant. And we're also wondering what size the community should be. If it gets to 200 people or 300, I might divide it up. Like I might have a bipolar Boston, bipolar New York. But it's been incredibly meaningful with how much people have helped each other.
Does it have a similar step structure like AA does?
I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, they have a step, certain things along the way.
Okay.
They have to have. Several of us in the room just read a book called Milk, Whiskey, and Logan Way
Uh-huh.
in South Boston, written by a friend of mine. And it's about his own. He's been now sober 38 years. And I just read it. And those years, I didn't know how bad his addiction was. It's funny, I didn't know how bad it was. But now he, is there the same spiritual aspect that's in AA? Is there a spiritual aspect to
Yes.
yours as well?
Yes.
And how is that used?
I have a teacher named Madeline Klein. She's a Buddhist teacher at Cambridge Insight Meditation Center. And she will do lectures with us every now and then on different things around spirituality. We're doing one coming up on anger, on a different way to think about anger and how to rid your life of anger. Anger is a common attribute of mental illness. And when you're really manic or really depressed, you can also become really angry. And we're going to teach people how to cure themselves of anger. I feel very strongly about this. I think anger is a choice. I think people can be taught to get rid of anger. I also think in Buddhism, we say that being angry at someone else is like drinking poison and expecting them to die. We don't realize the violence anger brings in our own body and the tumors it creates. So we have a whole methodology of how to dissipate anger.
Oh, good luck with that. Good luck.
Yeah.
Listen. I have a quote that I want to read to the panel from the New Yorker magazine, December 11th, The Optimist, the full story of Microsoft's relationship with OpenAI. Here's a quote. AI will continue to steadily seep into our lives at a pace gradual enough to accommodate the cautions required by short-term pessimism, and only as fast as humans are able to absorb how this next technology ought to be used. There remains the possibility that things will get out of control, and the incremental seep of AI will prevent us from realizing those dangers until it's too late. Steve, any reaction to that quote?
Yeah, I was talking to my friend Nick earlier here, he's in the audience, and he made an interesting comment that we got to keep our eyes open for the documentaries Terminator and The Matrix. You know, to be careful, we're worried about AI. Unfortunately, the people seem to think that's reality to some extent, and they're worried about those things happening, and it's creating some sort of mania, and that people are afraid of AI really taking over. And yes, it's like any new technology, from nuclear technology to the car, bad things can happen. But you know, I feel like it's something we're going to embrace. And one of the issues I also hear is we talk about regulating it and managing it as a lawyer. You think about that. And yeah, we can regulate it in the US, but we're just a little piece of the world. Like we're on planet Earth. So I just wonder how we can be perfect stewards of this technology, but how will people in other countries behave? And so it's going to take a lot of cooperation with world treaties and whatnot.
Jan?
You know, my take on this, I try to be tactical or specific in terms of how it affects me and how I see it affecting others. And I'll share two analogies, I guess. 20 years ago, I was sitting around a table with a bunch of senior partners. I was a young partner at the time, and I had just rejoined that firm. It was not Nutter, and we were having I brought to the attention of the partners that I needed to have a BlackBerry, 2004. And the tech clients that I dealt with and the capital sources I dealt with were living off of BlackBerries at the time, which were the dominant form of communication, pre-iPhone effectively. And I'll never forget, till the day I die, one of the senior partners who was one of the most successful partners in the firm at the time, he's pensive and he thinks about it and he says, well, wait a minute. Because none of them had BlackBerries, if I have one of these things, that means I'm going to have to be available to my client 24/7, 365. And therein lied the rub. He did not understand that that was the new reality for professional service providers coming down the pike. And either you adjust or you die. And he retired pretty quickly after that. The second point I'd like to make is, as maybe a junior or mid-level associate, this would have been late 90s, lawyers used to, when you make changes to documents and you're sending it to the other side, that's called red lines, the markups. And when I first started practicing, you know, my first summer, I was called in and I was doing a red line with a felt pen and a ruler, and then the software became available. It was automated. But for a long time, the job of junior associates, first-year associates, was to basically run the red lines, prepare all the FedEx packages for the other side every night and send it out. And they would bill, 8 hours of time doing that very manual, tactical thing. And then I was at a smaller, more nimble firm that didn't have secretaries, and we had this software, which was disruptive. It created the red lines, and then you could attach things to your email, which was, for those who are young in here, a novel concept. And that same firm where I had that conversation with the senior partner, we weren't attaching anything. We were using email intermittently. It was still very letter-driven phone calls. And I was on some high-stakes venture deal, and I was dealing with an associate out of a big firm in New York, an Irish kid. And it was 11 at night. I'm by myself. I have a young kid at home that I'm not seeing. And I'm trying to figure out how can I get better at what I'm doing? Because this isn't working for me. And I'm thinking about the attachment concept, and many people here are probably like, this is so obvious. It was not obvious back then because no one was doing it, at least in this firm. So I said, well, wait a minute, I know I can attach one document. What if I just attach all of these documents for this deal in the current iteration with the red lines? And it was like 8 or 10. And no one had ever really explained that to me. And so I attached them. And before I hit send, I called up the Irish kid. And I said, hey, are you at your desk? And he said, yeah, what's up? I said, I'm going to send something to you. And I hit send. And I could hear, remember the AOL, you've got mail, bing, through the speaker. And I can't exactly quote what he said in response, but he was like, holy, and he realized that we had just changed the nature of our deal. And it became much more efficient. And then I brought that to the senior partner's attention, and they immediately focused on the downside, which is, wait a minute, if we do that, that means all that billable time for all the prep. But here's the takeaway as it relates to AI, and this is how I feel about AI, at least within the legal construct. There'll be winners and losers. There'll be innovations that occur. But, you know, it's coming, and if you don't embrace it, then you're going to lose. But similar to these two disruptive things, the BlackBerry and then the iPhone and then, you know, email, the internet, and electronic transmission, that made our industry much more customer-centric, much more efficient, and more productive. And I foresee the same thing with AI within the legal world. I'll defer to Paul and others in terms of its broad applications. But we can't have personal opinions about this. It's coming. And if you're not familiar with it, then you need to start reading Wikipedia and start to learn about it. If you are familiar about it, then become more educated on it and figure out, as Paul was saying, how can it help you in your specific verticals? Because the early adopters are already doing that as we speak.
Well, you make me feel old because I go back to a time in law school in the late 70s when I used to cut and paste. And those days are gone. But if you're writing a law review article, you would end up cutting and pasting, you know, you're writing a brief or a memo. So you've come a long way. Paul, based on that quote and just based on generally what Shannon and Steve said, how do you find that balance where it's going fast enough, but it's not going too fast? With maybe some inherent dangers or concerns. But how do you reach that balance? As Shannon says, it's coming, get used to it, get ready, but then there may be a but you must be aware of potential, I use the word dangers.
Yeah, I think that anyone who works where there's a stack of papers on the left side of the desk and a stack of papers on the right side of the desk, and the human picks up these and does stuff and works on and produces the stack of papers, your jobs are all going to be changed and maybe eliminated in a lot of cases. The AI is really good at going through trillions of documents and making new documents, so to summarize key points and all that. If you're not using it already, I would say you're falling behind. I'm looking for, I'll give you an example. I just want a realtor in New York to sell an apartment I own. I'd love to find a realtor who uses AI to write the best descriptions that are tested, A/B tested, to make sure it gets the highest click-through. Really, anything that I do, any medical thing that I do, I would like the person I'm working with to be AI powered so they can do the work of more than one person. AI, it's like email. Before email, we had interoffice memos. When email came out, there was no going back. You cannot retreat from email. AI is just like that. It's here. You can't go back. You have to use it. Anyone processing information has to use it to process it more quickly, more efficiently, higher quality.
The question that I have, the quote in that article also about this gentleman who works for Microsoft, his mother went to the emergency room. He waited 9 or 10 hours and decided to leave. And he said, using AI, he could have had a diagnosis. When do we be concerned about judgment, experience, analysis when it comes to nurses or doctors?
There are some LLMs, large language models out there right now with the Mayo Clinic and some other places that GPT trained on these models can diagnose more accurately than a doctor can for many medical conditions, not for all conditions. Like, for example, having a skin doctor look at a mole to try to decide is this benign or is this something I should be worried about? AI does a much better job than a human doctor at determining if that mole needs to be cut. It's going to vary profession by profession, but the diagnosis is going to get really good. I think human patients are going to want to treat human doctors because the AI is going to be scary to the human patients. Some will be using the AI at home, and that's going to be frustrating for the doctors when they come in with a list of, I think my pancreas is falling apart, my kidney's not working, and they find any possible thing, and the doctor then is going to have to deal with that extra information. But I think we have to get started immediately. We'll use the judgment of the person, but we're also going to look at the stats along the way. Like if you cut the medical profession down, let's say at Beth Israel, there's 30 types of doctors there. Some of those doctors, the AI tools are going to do really well, really quickly. Other doctors that may be more specialized, it could take another 10 years. So it's going to change by profession, but it's happening right now.
Well, yes, Shannon, yeah.
Along those lines, we tend to look at it from a glass half empty. We get nervous with new technology, new innovations. But the flip side is also true along what Paul was saying in terms of medical technology. The African continent, there's a significant portion of that continent that does not have access to qualified medical care. With AI and remote access and these things, there are a significant number of applications within medical diagnosis that can be addressed with people in those situations where they don't have to come into physical contact with the doctor. So think about the transformation of healthcare in parts of the world that don't have the means or the access. That's the flip side, the positive side.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I mean, the article last week in the paper about the wait in the corridor at the various hospital emergency rooms. Wonder if AI could be helpful to those folks along. The issue of medical disparity, access. I'm going to pause for a second. And anybody have any questions or comments that they want to engage? Yeah. Yes, Tom.
Looks at relevance, quality versus
It's one of the biggest criticisms of OpenAI as a company that they don't disclose their sources universally. That will happen. I believe Gemini by Google does disclose sources a little bit more accurately. But I agree, if AI is going to make a decision on my behalf, I want to know what books it has read, and do those books relate to me as a person? It might not relate to me if I'm a 10-year-old African-American girl with a breathing issue. Maybe I need to make sure that AI is translated, is taught based on girls who would look like that patient. So I think there needs to be better movement for complete transparency. So every AI should give you the answer and should tell you what source it used for that answer. And once we start identifying sources, then we can help deal with issues like bias. Yeah, there is a second question about, like, do you trust CNN or do you trust Fox News? Like, I know how I would answer that, but some people trust different sources. So there's going to be politicized AIs. Like, I imagine an AI trained on Fox News would answer the question about Biden's age very differently than an AI trained on CNN.
The best of
Yeah.
all worlds would be you'd have AI and the LLM driving the AI, the large language model would be universal. this comes down to the databases. So within the context of legal, if you have a large firm that has been doing M&A for 40 years, we have 40 years worth of data, purchase agreements, all the stuff required to do an M&A deal. We can create a much more effective AI model to serve our purpose and become more efficient in doing those deals based on that data set versus a smaller firm that has a very limited data set. So when you're thinking about AI, whatever the vertical, whatever, and I agree with what Paul's saying, CNN versus Fox, those are two different data sets, right, with their inherent biases and things. And so the question is, as it evolves, will it become more comprehensive, or is it going to be effectively proprietary to each of the particular brands that are driving that particular AI model? And that comes with, and with that comes the sourcing and the vetting.
You can kind of, there are some open AI products that actually give you their sources. I forgot the name, but where you type in your question and it spits back the URLs of where they got their information from. That's not bad. Another way I've tried to have a little confidence is you can set up ChatGPT to give you its confidence level, which of course that's suspect in its own but still it's something. If it says low confidence, then you know, never, no way. If it says high, maybe it's high. So there, but that's going to change in the future.
Harry? Thank you.
Paul, I'm a proud grandparent of a child in fifth grade. Last year, my granddaughter came home. They have a math problem every month. She said, "Grandpa, you're good at math. I want to win this month. Can we do this problem?" Sure. So for the next hour and a half, I helped her break down the problem. Give her the answers, made her do the work, but I broke it down. Come up with an answer. Said to her, "Watch this." Go to ChatGPT. Boom, pops up an answer. She's like freaking out so quick. Answer. Now she freaks out even more. Grandpa, you're wrong. Wait a minute. Google. Go to Google. And Google confirmed what we were doing was correct. And I told her, this is only a tool. You have to be able to look at it and analyze whether or not it's giving you the correct answer. The next day, I put in this example again, came up with a wrong answer. And I asked her, well, what about this? Oh, you're correct, and they redid their. At what age, talk about in college getting involved with it, what age is it correct to get the kids using AI without it?
I would say early. I mean, one of these, I run 40 schools in Haiti right now, 10,000 students, and we're pre-K up till 9th grade in most cases, in some cases 12th grade. I'd get them involved early only because you also want to teach kids really young that humans make mistakes. Don't believe everything you hear. That's a really important lesson for kids. And if someone says something that's uncomfortable, it sounds dangerous, to have critical eyes, think about it. And so I think it's almost the same skill with the human and with the computer to say computers can make mistakes too, because computers are programmed by humans. And over time, as they get to more advanced grades, they can start to diagnose what types of mistakes, what types of language models will make. But that's a skill for like a later age. But at a later age, I would teach them very young that humans make mistakes and computers make mistakes. And one fun thing we do is play detective or play lawyer and try to root out what's correct here.
I mean, we've all been taught, don't believe everything you read. It's not dissimilar, right? Within the context of creating a purchase agreement through AI, it could potentially limit the junior and the mid's amount of access or work product hours, but you still need a senior experienced person to read through and figure out where the hallucinations occurred and refine it. Now, the promise of AI is that it will learn from its own mistakes and make those types of mistakes less going forward.
Yeah, when do you give a kid a calculator? Same question, right?
Shannon, when we were talking last week, Shannon, Barry used a word that you had used last week, and it's a tool. How would you describe that? How do you see that?
Well, listen, similar to what's been expressed here, and I always look for analogies to try to understand something new more quickly and more effectively. But if you can produce, as Paul was saying, you get a lot of paper, on a typical deal, you'll have diligence, which is one side going through. When I first started practicing, you would go, when you did due diligence and vetted the deal that you were trying to consummate, you'd fly to some city, you'd go to some conference room, and there'd be like 30 boxes of paper. And that's what the juniors did. Like, it was awful, okay? And you were stuck in Des Moines until you got through all 30 boxes, okay? And then you had to summarize it, and then you had to go back and read it because they would read the summaries and they'd have additional questions. Well, when that all became virtual, you now have something called a VDR, or virtual data room. People don't go anywhere for diligence. The diligence is all online, so it's a tool. And I view AI as an extension of that. AI will make our ability to, and there are applications, software applications already where you can program, put in parameters, and in the VDR, you can search, you can find things that you're specifically looking for. I think AI's promise is that it's even more proactive, and it will start to create searches that you might not have even thought of for purposes of your diligence.
I think it'll dramatically improve diagnosis. It'll shorten lines in the waiting room. It'll make sure people get the right diagnosis. A lot of medical conditions are pretty easy to treat. If you catch them early, if you catch them late, they could kill someone. So the sooner symptoms are discovered that those are real symptoms, and those are concerning. This looks like you might have a ruptured spleen, which is something pretty serious. The earlier diagnosis, I think, the better will be.
Now we're getting to a time, oh yes, Frank?
When do you think, we talked about the diagnosis, how far away AI? When do you make a lot of administrative work, big work in the world? When will AI take everything from
Yeah.
the doctor to the Roomba?
Surgery is a good idea. I have prostate cancer, and my cancer is early stage. Nothing has to be done about it yet, but I'm always reading the latest literature about treatment for prostate cancer, because when and if mine becomes a problem, I need to know how to deal with it. And I'm reading about robotic surgery and the success of robotic surgery over plain human surgery. I have a friend who needs her gallbladder out. That's robotic surgery now these days, 3 tiny incisions. Airplanes, fly themselves generally better than pilots. I think the pilot union has the pilot awake during ascent and descent. But for a lot of flights, the airplane's flying itself, not just Boston to London, but the airplane can land itself also. We're just not ready there as a society. So we pay a good-looking human to sit in the front and with the steering wheel.
Pretty close.
I think so. You look at self-driving. I don't know how people have self-driving cars. Self-driving cars is a great example of machine vision and artificial intelligence. Tesla gets a lot of heat because anyone who stands out and doing something new always gets attacked. Not that they don't deserve some of their attack, but a lot of it is ridiculous. There are cases of Tesla Autodrive killing people. I believe that. I believe that it kills people sometimes. I also believe that Autodrive doesn't drive drunk. It doesn't text and drive, or at least doesn't have a problem texting driving, and it doesn't get sleepy. Tesla's data shows that per million miles of autopilot engaged versus autopilot not engaged, it's safer right now today. The reason they're having trouble communicating that to the mass press is the mass press hears this very extremely rare incident of a Tesla catching on fire. It makes front page news, even though Ford F-150s catch on fire like 5 times as much. That doesn't make front page news. So I think the media is fucking up our ability to learn what's actually going on. And the media doesn't look at things like statistics. They take anomalies and make that the news. But I think it's already happening. I think the corner has been turned.
Thank you. Oh, we're going to close now and with one last question, but thank you all for coming today. Sort of a last question. If you had a crystal ball, what do you see as the future of AI, pro and con? We've touched on it a little bit, but Steve, what do you see happening?
We're going to be, our kids are going to be up here in 10 years or 15 years saying, could you believe back then they had to do blah? And just like we're doing now. And it's going to be a dramatic change. And again, like I said earlier, regulation's going to be hard internationally, and nationally is even going to be hard. But I'm very excited. It's going to make a big change. I wonder where it's going to end. Like, is it going to end where nobody has a job? Or is it going to end where we all have just new jobs like computers created all these other industries?
Shannon?
I feel it's art imitating life, and by that I mean, when I was a kid, I used to watch this show called Star Trek Voyager. It was not the original, but it was Jean-Luc Picard, and that was all AI, right? They're talking to the computer that's well, next generation. Sorry. Yeah, so you're more of a geek about it than I am. But there was AI on the ship, and they were interactive, and it was a voice. Sometimes it was droids, whatever. And I remember there was this episode where the captain, I don't know if he was dying or if he was at the end of it, and he was talking to a young cadet that was just starting his career. And the phrase was, you're just at the beginning, and you're going to see all of this stuff. That's how I feel about AI. I wish I were 30 years younger right now, because I think over the next 30 years, it's going to be exponentially transformational compared to what we've just lived through over the last 20 years with the internet and smartphones and communication. So I'm really excited about it. There'll be some winners and losers, but I think it'll be a net positive exponentially.
Thank you. Paul?
The first thing I would say is even without AI, the world's been getting better in the last 50 years. There's less wars, there's less starvation, there's less childhood sickness that a lot of cures been having. I think that will accelerate. I think AI will help healthcare in a major way with early diagnosis and early treatment. I think AI-based healthcare will also be involved in drug discovery and personalized medicine. I think people will live longer and live healthier later. Hopefully cancer and dementia, 2 big issues, and obesity, 3 big issues that there'll be solutions to that in part will be done with personalized drugs. I think that there'll be fewer deaths while driving as the cars take over the driving, and the car, if you turn left, the car says, the human wanted to turn left. I could turn left right now, but if I turn left right now, and it'd do the analysis to decide whether and when to override the human. I do think we'll have shorter work weeks. I do think that the trend, one really dangerous trend in the last 50 years is wealth concentration at the top. And if you look through thousands of years of history, anytime there's wealth concentration at the top, there's a revolution. I think AI tools are now being made through OpenAI and Google and elsewhere and Facebook to the masses at low cost, such that anyone can build an AI business. So I'm hoping that reverses the shift of only the people with the expensive resources can take advantage of the future.
Steve, thank you very much. Shannon, thank you. Paul, thank you very much.
All right.
And thank you all for coming today.